There's nothing quite like seeing justice served to officers who are held accountable in the one place they can't escape, the courtroom. You'll be shocked to discover how this officer tried to defend his illegal actions in the most shocking way.
Get your hands up! Get your hands up! That's what he's treating. That's how he's treating a stranded citizen.
Sometimes the courtroom becomes the ultimate stage for justice, where no badge can shield the truth. Today, we're diving into those unforgettable moments when corrupt cops were exposed and owned in front of a judge.
I have no idea what's going to happen right now. I do know one thing. There's going to be one side who's going to be brokenhearted. One side's going to be brokenhearted. We know that for sure. What I ask everybody, and then I follow it up with I'm ordering, that I am respectful that this is the most pressure-packed moment for most people in their entire lives.
On March 7th, 2019, following a decision he made that resulted in the most horrifying circumstance conceivable, Palm Beach officer Newman Raja was informed of the verdict of his trial, and the result was far from pretty.
I hereby sentence Mr. Raja to 25 years in the Department of Corrections. That is as a minimum mandatory, which was required that he serve day for day.
However, 8 days before, at the start of Raja's trial, the prosecution had disclosed the true reason for his detention.
That defendant right there chose to refuse to act like any reasonable law enforcement officer approaching a stranded citizen in help. That is why Corey Jones died that evening. He recklessly created a situation which could only be expected to result in somebody being seriously injured or killed. You see, this isn't just a tragic story. This is a tragedy that was created. It was created by him. It resulted in an innocent man being killed. Corey Jones was doing nothing except waiting for help on the side of the road because his SUV broke down. And one of the few people that should have unquestionably been there to assist him on the side of that road did exactly the opposite. Instead of being Corey Jones' saving grace, he was his angel of death.
In this instance, Corey Jones was the victim, and his contact with Raja was his final moment.
The evidence will show that there's no way Corey Jones knew, even at the time that he was running, fleeing from the back of his vehicle, running into the dark, seeking cover, laying there on the ground, dying, breathing his last breath. No way that he knew that the person that actually shot and killed him was a law enforcement officer. He's out at the middle of the night on the side of the road, stranded. And unlike a lot of folks in this world, he was patient, he was nice. All he wanted was some help to get home. You'll hear it with your own ears. You'll hear how he's calm. You'll hear how he's giving her information just to get the help that he needs. But see, unfortunately for Corey Jones, his bad luck was turning much worse. Because unknown to him, that defendant was on duty.
Officer Raja responded as Jones waited for non-emergency assistance, and Jones unfortunately paid the price for circumstances which were out of his hand.
See, he was a police officer at that time in Palm Beach Police Department. He was working a detail, a plainclothes detail, where he was supposed to surveil neighborhoods, looking for car burglars. And if he saw anything, he's supposed to call up marked units to come and take care of the issue. And he has supposed to be wearing a tactical vest, like you see on TV, in the news, maybe in person, with big letters that say police across it. So everybody knows who he is. If he gets out of that van, an unmarked van, he's supposed to be clearly identifiable as a law enforcement officer.
Raja chose to play the judge, jury, and executioner roles rather than taking any of these measures.
And instead of doing what everybody would expect a law enforcement officer to do when they're approaching a stranded, a potentially abandoned, but at least a vehicle that's stranded on the side of the road. That defendant did everything wrong. He did everything that you would not expect. He's driving an unmarked white van, and he comes along and he goes up the wrong way of an I-95 exit ramp.
Raja also asserted throughout his trial that he had introduced himself to Jones as an officer, although an audio recording refuted this. This was the starting point of his downfall.
Now, Corey Jones, he's got an expensive job. He goes into not the nicest parts of Delaware Beach for his job. So he did what any lawful American can do. He purchased a firearm, .380 handgun. You can't even try to create the situation he got. He got that done 2 days prior to this event. It was still in the box in his glove compartment. But as soon as that defendant recklessly pulls up to him at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the way that he did,
this would refute Raja's other assertion, namely that Jones's armed status was the reason his hand was forced.
Corey Jones knew what was exactly about to happen. What any reasonable person could expect to happen. You'll show through the evidence today and through the next 2 weeks what Corey Jones was thinking. You'll hear how Corey Jones had that gun in that box. You'll hear the chimes of the door opening from Corey Jones' SUV because he still had the keys in the ignition. And you'll hear the last words that Corey Jones ever spoke in this world. They weren't confrontational words. They weren't fighting words. They were calm words that unfortunately turned to fear. Because there's the defendant. Nothing that shows he's an officer. He didn't even pull out the badge, which was in his wallet, in his back pocket, to show to Corey Jones. Much less put on that vest that said police, or even had his radio or his gun. There's no verbal identification that you're going to hear on that recording when Corey Jones was talking to that sales representative that had to sit there and witness this horrific event unfold.
Given how seriously Raja's conduct was portrayed, the prosecutor's response was entirely justified by the facts of the case.
Yeah, I'm good. Really? That's what he's saying. That's not how an officer talks to a citizen at 3 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road. But that's how he spoke to what he saw with Corey Jones on the side of that road. All the while, when he's saying this, when you listen to this tape, realize things didn't stop. We're not all of a sudden just done with action. As this defendant is saying these words to Corey Jones, and Corey Jones is responding back, he's getting closer and closer to Corey Jones. He's actually chasing Corey Jones away from his vehicle. Corey's already retreating back out of his doorway to the back of his vehicle. A citizen that's stranded on the side of the road, already being chased from his vehicle.
Given what transpired, it is horrifying to believe that Raja didn't pause for even a moment before profiling Jones.
Get your hands up! Get your hands up! That's what he's screaming. That's how he's treating a stranded citizen. Immediately within seconds, that's what he's saying. Profane orders being shouted at a time when a guy is sitting with a broken down car, trying to get home. And what is Corey saying? He doesn't respond in kind with profanity. He says, hold on, hold on. Once again, get your effing hands up. Drop. 3 shots.
Apart from Raja's intention to kill a man in cold blood, something the jury was definitely not allowing him to get away with, none of this was justified.
He didn't ask for it. It got thrust upon him by the person that was supposed to be caring for his safety. He made a decision to shoot first and ask questions later.
Raja is a symbol of everything that is wrong with the police force today, which permits complete psychopaths to hold high positions.
He's thrown down the gun already that he had in his hand that was meant to protect him, and you consider that Corey Jones is running for his life after being shot at on the side of the road. That's forever. 10 seconds between the third and the fourth shot. 10 seconds for a young man running for the color of darkness. 10 seconds for that defendant right there finally do what he is supposed to do as a law enforcement officer. But that's not what the evidence is going to show he did. It's going to show his recklessness. His absolute reckless behavior from the start is now changing. It's evolving. It's now becoming a premeditated intent to kill.
The facts would go to show that this was something far worse than an accident or a case of ineptitude.
He waits over 30 seconds. 30 seconds to call 911. And why was he calling 911? Because he didn't have his radio on him like he's supposed to. He had to use his own phone to call 911, and he waited 30 seconds to call. Before getting medical assistance for Corey Jones, before getting much needed assistance, if he was truly in fear of his life, when he needs to call a coward, 30 seconds. Doing what? Letting Corey Jones die. And how is he going to act?
This could be the lone instance in which the prosecution was incorrect. It's very possible that Raja has done this before. He doesn't seem like a first-time killer.
With great power comes great responsibility. Law enforcement officers undoubtedly possess great power, great capacity for good. But that necessarily equals great responsibility in the way that those powers are used. They have a right to kill a person if necessary. But they don't have a right to kill anybody without absolute necessity.
According to the prosecution, Raja may not have killed Jones out of sentimentality or rage, but rather out of a simple lack of concern. What else could this careless killer possibly done?
And he's going to explain to you, the judge will tell you what culpable negligence means. He's going to say it means a course of conduct showing a reckless disregard for human life or the safety of other persons exposed to its dangerous effects of conscious indifference to the consequences. I couldn't have thought up better words to explain exactly what he did.
However, the possibility that Raja may have plotted this from the beginning raises even more serious questions.
He was reckless from the start. He created the situation, and the evidence is going to show you that he could have only expected one result. The death of Corey Jones. And that's manslaughter. It doesn't matter if we're bad. It doesn't matter if you're hopeless. It's manslaughter. But see, he doesn't get a free pass under the law for those last 3 shots. The last 3 shots that he waited 10 seconds to deliver. It took 1 second interval between each one. The law doesn't give him a free pass for those shots.
Raja has no points in his defense, no way to escape justice, and the walls are closing in on him fast.
You're going to hear medical examiner come up here, forensic pathologist, and explain to you all the injuries that Corey Jones sustained. He was shot in the left forearm, fractured the bone in his forearm to the point where it compounded. It came out of his skin. He was shot in the back of the arm, the back of this arm, on the right side of the upper arm, and it went through right out. He was shot in the right side of his chest, and that bullet ripped through his body, destroyed his aorta, and lodged into his left shoulder.
The prosecution attacked Raja one last time, suggesting that while he may have been a criminal, he was not a clever one.
I'm confident that you're going to agree on the one verdict for which all the evidence will support. And that's the verdict finding him guilty as charged of being a reckless killer and for trying to murder Corey Jones. I'm going to ask you to hold him responsible for how he misused that power.
The worst aspect is that Raja showed no remorse and even attempted to justify his behavior with his family. But the judge, thankfully, did not see it that way.
Newman Raja, defendant, verdict. We, the jury, find as follows. As to count one, we find a defendant guilty of manslaughter while armed with a firearm as charged in the information. As to count two, we find a defendant guilty of attempted first-degree murder as charged in the information. If you find a defendant guilty of attempted first-degree murder, you must next answer the following questions. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant actually possessed a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant actually discharged a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant in discharging the firearm actually caused great bodily harm or death to Corey L. Jones? Yes.
However, this case ended well because Raja had to face the consequences of his actions. Circuit Judge Joseph Marks could have given Raja a life sentence. Marks imposed a 25-year sentence on both convictions to be served concurrently. Up next, we have two other corrupt cops whose carelessness led to something very unfortunate, to say the least.
I'm sorry!
On October 8, 2020, the Stockton Police Department received two 911 calls from a local AM/PM on Trinity Parkway, one from an employee and one from a customer, Shane Sutherland. The officers arrived at the scene, but the negligence on display ultimately caused something absolutely devastating and unfixable.
911, what's the emergency?
Can I get a taxi cab to the AM/PM?
This is 911, not a taxi cab.
I know.
Yeah, we don't order taxi cabs on 911.
Oh, well, yeah, that's,
You could try 411.
oh, no, that needs to come to, that needs to come to AM/PM.
What does?
What I call?
911?
Yeah.
What's your emergency?
Someone's trying to rob me over here.
Who is?
Somebody in the store.
Are you an employee there?
Yeah.
What is your name?
Oh, no, I'm not an employee, I'm just a customer.
What is your name?
This was the first 911 call the police received. It suddenly and mysteriously ended.
The address of your emergency?
Yes, emergency.
You need police, medical, or fire?
Police as soon as possible, because the guy is trying to threaten us and just hold a bottle of wine and just he's going to throw it on us.
Okay, what's your name?
Calling. My name is. I just did call and nobody's
Yeah.
here, so.
Okay, we have an officer on the way, so I'll update them.
Yeah,
Said he's threatening to throw a wine bottle at you?
Yeah, he's grabbing a wine bottle right now, and he just took a bottle from the top, and he was trying to threaten us. And
Okay.
he's standing right by the register, so no customer could get to the register even.
Okay, I'll go ahead and update the call. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Bye-bye.
There was no time to waste. This guy could have seriously taken someone's life if the officers didn't act fast.
You paying for it?
The officers then took the man outside to understand what had happened in a safe environment, so they could assess the situation to the best of their abilities.
Sit down, on your butt.
I was trying to buy a bottle of wine.
You were?
Yeah.
So how come he's telling us that you're threatening him with it?
I don't.
It's on camera.
Yeah,
All I got to do is go look.
I didn't threaten anybody with it.
You didn't hold it up like this?
No.
Okay. Do you have money to buy wine?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, so why are you calling 911?
I didn't.
No?
No. I was just trying to call a cab company.
Why?
Well, because I needed to get a cab to my
Okay,
hotel.
but you called 911 and the dispatcher told you that.
No, I think it was already done.
And then you said and you said that somebody was robbing you.
No, that wasn't me.
No, that was you.
I don't recall, sir.
He was saying it was not him, but the officer kept putting words in his mouth. Someone should tell him that this isn't how a cordial conversation should go.
What's your name?
Shane Sutherland.
Let me see your ID.
Yep.
Don't get up, just get it out of your pocket. You on probation or parole?
I'm on informal probation.
For what?
Just some old stuff from a long time ago.
What is that? What old stuff?
Nothing violent.
What is it?
Christ,
Spit it
I can't
out.
remember, sir. Honestly, I can't
Really?
remember.
You don't know what you were arrested for?
No, I
mean,
can't.
the drugs probably have something to do with it.
Yeah.
I'll run
Yeah.
with that.
How can the cop just assume role in his past arrest without any evidence to suggest so? The ignorance on display is appalling, to say the least.
I really haven't.
Well, no. There's either I do or I don't. Not I really haven't. You're high out of your mind right now.
This is
Cocaine?
Yeah.
Okay. When's the last time you used cocaine?
earlier this morning.
Okay.
Earlier today.
So is that why you're acting out the way you do? Sit down. Sit
Oh,
down.
sorry.
You may think the cops haven't done anything wrong yet, but your perspective is about to twist the other way absolutely.
At the Motel 6.
By himself?
I guess.
Yeah, I got ID.
Who do you live with at Motel 6?
Just by myself.
Yeah?
God.
Yeah.
Wait, which Motel 6? There's two of them.
The Motel 6 in Tracy.
Oh, in Tracy.
Yeah, by Panera Bread. Fuck you, dude. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Relax.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm relaxed.
Hey, relax.
I'm relaxed, sir.
Stop it.
Okay.
Don't
Hey,
Yes,
fight.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Knock
Yes,
it
sir.
off.
Yes, sir.
Knock it off.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dude, quit fighting.
I
You understand?
Yes, sir. I got it. I understand. I won't move. I won't move at all.
The officer's telling him to quit fighting when he's so badly hurt that he's unable to resist.
You're not going to. Stop fighting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm dead funny. Ah!
Relax.
Yes, sir.
You're,
Please let me breathe. Oh,
Knock it off.
stop.
I promise, sir.
Relax.
I won't be breathing.
Relax.
I promise.
Hey, calm down.
Oh, I can't breathe. No.
Relax.
Ah!
We're not. Relax.
No!
Hopefully, this next officer learned his lesson because he was publicly shamed in the worst way imaginable.
What you meant was, I am going to make sure Ms. Reed doesn't skate. She's
Today, we'll be witnessing the dramatic courtroom showdown where corrupt officers were finally held accountable. In June 2024, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator in the case of Karen Reed, who was charged with Lover, a police officer 2 years prior, acknowledged that he had discussed private information about the case with his acquaintances. The video below shows Trooper Proctor being completely decimated during his cross-examination.
Trooper Proctor, you never thought when you were engaged with these other 8 individuals that this particular set of chats would ever become public, did you?
No, I did not.
I want to take a look at page 2527, if you could turn, that's on the bottom right of the document in tab 2. Do you recognize, do you have that page in front of you?
Yes, sir.
You recognize that this group chat was taking place on January 29th at about 10:52 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And the person that I'll identify as 5051, that's the last 4 digits of that phone number, indicates Chip, name of that BPD cop, correct?
Correct.
The extent of this trooper's lack of professionalism was beyond comprehension. Fortunately, he would be held responsible.
First of all, you indicated on Monday that you're Chip, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You responded at 10:53 p.m., John O'Keefe, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you were willing to tell, just a few hours into an investigation of the death of a Boston police officer, you were willing to tell a bunch of high school buddies details about the investigation, including the name of the victim, correct?
At this point, it's 16 hours later, sir. Not a few.
16 is a few hours, correct? I'm not talking about days later.
It was about 16 hours later, sir.
Correct. And you identified John O'Keefe as the Boston police officer who is fallen in the yard at 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
The murder case was serious, and yet it was still unresolved. Even if it makes sense, it is incredibly foolish to reveal information about an unresolved matter, especially when no conclusion has been reached.
You wrote, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And the reason you wrote that is because you knew, as the text above it says, this has to be cut and dry because it involves cops, right?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that. Is that the reason you wrote it?
No, Your Honor.
And then you indicated we're going to put serious charges on the girl. Who did you mean by the girl, by the way?
The defendant.
Karen Reed?
Yes, sir.
Given that Miss Reed had been charged with it was evident that the trooper held prejudice against her. Due to his bias, it was very risky for him to be the lead investigator.
So the way that you were going to make it cut and dry, pretty simple. Just pin it on the girl, right?
Objection.
Is that right?
Absolutely not. Follow the facts and the evidence from that day on the 29th, and everything led to Miss Reed hitting Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle.
But that wasn't the question that you were answering, was it? We're going to follow the evidence and make sure we do this thoroughly. The question you were answering was, I assume you guys, you, Trooper Proctor, and your team are going to, quote, make it cut and dry, since it involves cops, meaning Brian Albert, correct?
Incorrect. Doesn't matter to me if the homeowner's a cop, if the victim's a police officer. Myself and everyone in my office investigated this case that Saturday, had an overwhelming amount of evidence that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe. So it didn't matter to us what their occupation was.
We'll see. Let's keep reading, shall we?
The trooper's goal was, in fact, to get Miss Reed into trouble, and Reed's defense made compelling arguments.
17 hours into this investigation, Trooper Proctor, you made the decision that you were going to put it on Miss Reed, didn't you? Put the case on Miss Reed. She was going to catch the case, correct?
No, absolutely not.
What did you mean then when you said she's
After the day's investigation with multiple troopers conducting multiple tasks and a debriefing at Canton PD amongst detectives in my office, we went through the overwhelming amount of evidence against Miss Reed that she struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle. That's what I meant by that comment.
He wouldn't be discussing Miss Reed in the way he did if the evidence was the true cause.
What you meant by that comment, Trooper Proctor, was you were going to make sure because 5051 had said she's going to skate. She's skating. When you said 0 chance she skates, meant was, I'm going to make sure, I am going to make sure Ms. Reed doesn't skate. That's what you meant, isn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
And then Bird decides to chime in, good, no ass, right?
Yes, that's what he wrote.
He promised to ensure that Miss Reed wouldn't skate. This was enough to reveal his personal grudge.
And how did you respond to Bird saying, good?
I laughed.
Thought that was funny, did you? Trooper Proctor? Thought that was funny?
It was unprofessional of me. That's something I shouldn't have done.
Well, I think we all know it was unprofessional. It was a lot of things. I'm asking
Yep.
you, did you think it was funny?
No, according to my response at the time, apparently.
Then you sent a picture, just to add to it, to pile on, of Miss Reed being arrested, correct?
The trooper's actions are utterly disgusting, and the worst part, he didn't even appear to genuinely regret what he did.
Not sure if that came from me, sir.
Let's skip to 2543. Are you there, Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
The date is now February 2nd, 2022. And a person by the name of Doc writes, is that chick a smoke? Correct?
Correct.
Who's the chick?
Miss Reed.
And you write E-H, right?
Yes.
And then you write nutbag, as Chief would say, correct?
Correct.
Who's Chief?
A friend of mine.
Wait until you hear what else he had to say about Miss Reed. It will leave you stunned.
What?
She's got a leaky balloon knot.
Trooper Proctor, explain to the jurors what a balloon knot is.
Your, essentially, I guess, your rectum area.
Your anus?
Yes.
That's what you were referring to about Miss Reed?
Yes.
And you were making fun of her because you believed at that time that it leaked? That's how you were treating Miss Reed? Yes or no?
Yes.
And then you followed that up just to make sure you cleared up any mistake about what you meant with leaks poo, correct?
Objection.
All right, so I'm going to strike that. You could get this in, but do it the right way, Mr. Jackson.
You followed that up with the phrase leaks poo, didn't you?
I did.
Again, another reference to Miss Reed's medical issues and medical conditions, correct?
Correct.
Specifically focused on her anus, correct?
In reference, yes.
This cross-examination should have resulted in the officer's termination. It is clear that he is a terrible and unreliable individual who is unworthy of being referred to as a cop.
Were you aware at the time that you wrote this that Miss Reed had suffered a colectomy surgery, very serious surgery?
I was not, sir, no.
Were you aware that she had had 10 surgeries in 18 months, several years prior? 10.
I was not aware of that.
Were you aware that she had serious medical issues, gastrointestinal medical issues, that she suffered with, she was a victim of for years? Did you know that?
Objection.
Sustained.
But you decided that you were going to take another shot at her and talk about her anatomy.
1 second, sir.
Karen Reed's lawyers are expected to file a motion to dismiss this case even before the second trial begins. The judge said on Friday there will be a hearing on that in mid-February. In this next case, we have an officer who committed a heinous crime and was put to justice.
The next memory I have is dude on top of me.
In July 2016, Fritz pulled over a car in which McMillan was a passenger. The car's driver was taken into custody for driving under the influence. According to the case's prosecutors, Fritz then led McMillan to a hotel room and then another one where he proceeded to several times.
Everything's on now?
Yes, my friend Melissa said she's going to get a hold of her friend Joe.
Okay, well, put it this way. You got about less than 5 minutes for her to make that decision. If not, I'm going to end up probably impounding your car and you can go to his house, okay?
Oh my God, please.
Alright?
And she said he's an older minister.
Did you put your pants on? Where did you put your pants on?
Please tell me right now. Melissa said he was.
I don't know. Are you going to put your...
God.
Do you have a problem with me looking in the car to make sure there's no marijuana so I can smell it? Can I look in your car and make sure there's no marijuana?
Oh my God, you can look in this car. I am a nurse.
Okay.
There's nothing
Can you
in there.
do me a favor and stand right about here for me? Where my light is?
Yes.
Can you stand or can you not? You were going to be putting them on a couple minutes ago, so...
No, I had a skirt on.
Where's your skirt at?
The biggest warning sign you will ever see will be what this officer did next. It provides us with a preview of what this awful officer has planned for later that evening.
I don't know what's in this car, but I was driving. He was driving. I was driving.
Your skirt is in the car? I do not see a skirt.
I don't either. What did he say?
Okay. Do me a favor. Come on, stand out here for me, alright, Melissa?
Look.
You don't want to kick that shoe. There you go. That'd probably be better here. I'll throw your shoe on the floor for you.
Yeah.
You can just leave that there. That's fine. Do me a favor. Hang on.
Ex-husband.
Hang on. Right there in the front of the car for me, okay?
It's okay.
That's alright. There's no reason for you to be sorry. I heard you.
Hold the permission.
If I bring you a highly intoxicated chick, did you drop her off in the hotel for me so she can get a hotel room?
I can tell that this officer has very bad intentions because of how easily he was doing all of this. This couldn't have been his first time.
This dude picked this chick up in the bar, okay? She is slam wasted. He's a 179, so he's going. but she doesn't want to go to his house.
Sorry, sir.
Alright, come on with me. Come on, Melissa, I need you to hop out.
Yes, sir. Let me get my stuff.
You got everything?
Yes, all okay.
Alright.
Right here. What's your makeup?
It's right next to you, right there.
Okay, here it is, sir. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's okay. I know, you even misplaced it. Come on with me. I know. You'll get it straightened out. You'll get it straightened out. I need you to come with me, Melissa.
I know you need me to get out of the car right now.
I know you.
I'm here to see you right now.
I have never witnessed a police officer transport an intoxicated individual to a motel rather than simply contacting a family member. Everyone in the courtroom knows that this is abnormal.
I hope I'm my cigarette because I'm stuck in the right now.
I'll get you.
I'm sorry, I'm so into you.
That's okay.
Just a volunteer officer.
Tell me what your first recall is after leaving Captain Lou's.
It's so hard to remember because everything is so blurry and being on the side of the road.
You do remember that?
Very, very vaguely, yes.
Lay down in one of the beds that was in that room.
Yes.
Okay.
It is ridiculous that such police officers believe they can get away with their heinous crimes, especially when there are cameras nearby.
And do you remember doing that, or?
No.
Okay. Did there come a point in time, or do you have any memory of the officer returning to the hotel room?
No.
Okay. And when is your next memory of seeing the officer there in the hotel room, if at all?
The next memory I have is he was on top of me. Having intercourse.
All I need to be convinced that this horrible police officer used her is the fact that she didn't even recall what had happened. The following video was taken on July 17, 2017, the day that Officer Fritz was finally sentenced.
And sir, you are Eric Fritz?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you're here today with your attorney, Mr. Grable. Have you had a full and complete opportunity to consult with him?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you understand that you face today a possible maximum penalty of 15 years in prison?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you ready for sentencing?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
As a police officer who took an oath to protect and serve the community, what you did to me was wrong. You raped me. You knew I was highly intoxicated, yet you used that as a selfish opportunity. My life has been forever changed. Every aspect of my life has been affected. My children have struggled. My friends, family, and loved ones have watched me through a year of hell. I can't see a police vehicle without feeling fear or be reminded of what happened. I made a poor decision to have too many drinks, putting myself in a vulnerable position. I don't remember leaving the bar that night, but my friends had arranged for another person to drive my car, and I was far too intoxicated. I had no idea the driver was also intoxicated and would get pulled over by a police officer.
The court video cuts to Captain Eric Fritz now defending himself, but he is unable to disentangle his web of falsehoods to rid himself of responsibility. Justice is now certain because of the horrible crime he committed.
Mr. Fritz, anything you wish to tell me?
Yes, Your Honor. First, I'd like to apologize to my friends and family who have actually let down. I'd also like to apologize for my coworkers who I my decisions. I'd also like to apologize to the people of Courtroom Township for my actions that night. And I absolutely would like to apologize for Ms. McMillan for my horrific decision of offering her a hotel room. I never should offer her a hotel room in the first place. It never should happen. I never should put her in that situation.
Thank you, sir.
But this ethical judge will not tolerate Fritz's absurdity.
You took a law enforcement oath of honor to protect and to serve and to uphold the highest of ethical standards. Instead, he preyed upon and exploited and damaged a woman who was entirely helpless due to excessive intoxication. Even more disturbing to this court is the fact that you used your badge and the authority and power it grants you as a means to implement your criminality. You betrayed her, you betrayed your fellow officers, you betrayed mightily the public trust all of us had.
In the interview that follows, the victim's daughter discussed the sentence received. Your heart will be broken.
You know, there's a family behind here, and unfair, you know, it's a year and 5 probation. It's not going to compare to what my mom has gone through, what our family has gone through, what we've lost in a year. We've bonded in a year, we've gotten closer, but I'm thankful that they took this seriously and that what needed to get done got done. It's out there, and he's not going to be a police officer anymore.
Finally, the most unforgettable breakdown of all. A corrupt cop who thought he could outsmart the jury, only to have reality slam him in the face.
Did you form an opinion as to whether the defendant was under the influence?
Yes, I felt Mr. Woods was under the influence.
Justice takes center stage as corrupt cops are finally held accountable for their actions. In this intense courtroom showdown, watch as the tables turn and these officers face the consequences they thought they'd never see. On May 18, 2018, DUI criminal defense attorney Larry Foreman cross-examined a confident cop on the stand and completely stunned him and everyone else in the courtroom. In fact, the cop's police report got taken away on the stand. Watch the video to the end to know what happens to these DUI charges.
I'm sorry. In part of DUI detection, what are some of the first steps of DUI detection that you learned in your training?
The very first step is obviously the driving of the suspect, your initial contact with the suspect, and then from there you make the determination whether or not field sobriety tests need to be administered, and then you administer those field sobriety tests. After those tests, you determine whether or not to arrest the subject and offer a breath or blood test to the suspect.
Okay. And now getting back to the field sobriety tests, what was the first one you mentioned?
This officer's name is Keith Addison, who arrested a man, Mr. Woods, for DUI. However, the cop did not have conclusive evidence for his act, and Mr. Woods' attorney would certainly take advantage of that.
Horizontal gaze nystagmus test.
Okay, and so what does that entail?
It is a test of your eyes. It's an horizontal nystagmus is an involuntary jerking of the eyes.
What causes that nystagmus?
Alcohol can cause nystagmus.
Okay. And so I'm sorry to interrupt. Continue.
Based on my training, they teach us to look at the pupil size to make sure the pupils are potentially the same size.
If they're not the same size, what is that indicative of?
That could be a medical issue.
Okay.
Mr. Woods' attorney then took a more direct and attacking approach.
Now, how many stops have you performed for suspicion of a DUI?
Hundreds.
And how many of those resulted in arrests?
Hundreds. Okay. I can't give you an exact number.
Okay. So you have a vast experience of doing DUI arrest and detection. And
I've been doing it for a while.
Okay. Now, were you on duty on January 7th, 2017?
Yes, sir.
Around maybe 10 o'clock that night?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was closer to 11, but yes.
Okay. Did you observe anything out of the ordinary around that time?
Yes, I was traveling east. I was just on patrol. I can't remember if I had left a call or had conducted another traffic stop. I'm not sure. But I was traveling east on 150 heading towards Stanford, not very far out of the city limits. And a white Mercedes, I was doing the speed limit 55 miles an hour, and a white Mercedes passenger car passed me in the fast lane and then abruptly moved over into my lane, what I would consider cutting me off. Came very close to the front of my vehicle. At that point, the vehicle continued on.
You must pay attention to what the officer said next, because it would be a very important piece of information which would be addressed later on by the defendant's attorney.
I don't have a radar in my car, so I matched speeds with the vehicle in front of me. My speedometer read 65 miles an hour. I initiated a traffic stop. Mr. Woods was the operator of the vehicle. I did observe an odor of alcoholic beverages from the vehicle. I did ask Mr. Woods if he had had anything to drink, and I think he stated 3 to 4 beers that they had just left a Mexican restaurant.
I'm sorry, did you say that he stated they just left the Mexican restaurant?
I think that's what he stated, yes.
All right, continue.
At that point, I had Mr. Woods step out of the vehicle. I asked him to perform a field sobriety test.
Specifically, keep in mind the part where he said he could smell the odor of alcoholic beverages.
Because I could observe the odor of alcohol on his breath even after he exited the vehicle. Mr. Woods really was not very cooperative at first and actually didn't want to take any test. At that point, I explained to Mr. Woods that that was the only way I could to determine whether or not he was safe to be on the roadway. That's how I needed to determine whether or not he could continue on operating the vehicle. Mr. Woods did perform the horizontal gaze and nystagmus test for me, where he exhibited all 6 clues. At that point, I asked him to take the... Your Honor, may we approach?
He probably refused to take the sobriety test because he wouldn't want to stand in the cold, and he wanted to be taken to jail so he wouldn't freeze to death.
Yeah.
Deputy, do you have your citation with you?
I do.
May I have the citation, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, so you had the defendant step out of the vehicle and he performed the HGN test. Is that where we were left off?
Yes, at that point, after the horizontal gaze and nystagmus test, I asked Mr. Woods to perform the walk and turn test, and Mr. Woods stated that there was no need to perform those.
Okay. Now, I've heard testimony that it may have been cold today, but what was your indication from him making that statement?
The attorney then questioned the certification status of the officer, hoping to perhaps get a loose end from there.
So, and just a real quick question back, do you have to recertify for your training, or do you go through a training every so often for DUI detection?
Every 2 years we have to recertify on the intoxilizer, which is the actual instrument that collects the breath and gives the readout for the breath test. As a law enforcement officer, we have to take 40 hours a year just in law enforcement basics, different courses every year that we're a law enforcement officer.
So, based on your 16 years experience, your 40 hours of training, did you form an opinion as to whether the defendant was under the influence?
Yes, I felt Mr. Woods was under the influence. Obviously, that's why he was placed under arrest.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time.
Oh, yes. Mr. Former Cross, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. I might just have one moment.
You may, sir.
You could see from the officer's face the attorney was asking the right questions. He was clearly tensed up and worried.
You have indicated that you've been doing this quite a while, 16 years, is that right?
I feel like that's a substantial amount of time, yes.
I would agree. That's a long time to be doing something like this. So you've been trained, you said recertified. You went to Richmond 16 years ago, I presume?
Correct.
And there you were given, was it, you said a 22-week course at the time?
Yes, sir.
I think they've since changed that. I think it's a little bit longer now, but...
I think it's went longer and then went shorter, and there were some Homeland Security issues that we had to go through, and I think that's why the course actually went longer.
Right. In your training, do you remember being taught to write your reports and make them as complete and as accurate as possible?
That's correct.
And they taught you that because in the future a jury may rely on it, right?
He The officer needlessly overcomplicated the answer to the attorney, asking whether the reports would be relied upon. Of course it would. They have to be accurate for a reason.
A judge would rely on it, wouldn't a judge rely on that as well?
I would assume I don't perform judge duties.
Mr. Johnson would rely on this report?
Yes, I believe you would.
I would rely on this report?
I guess you would.
So you made sure that this report is complete, accurate, and is not missing any information?
Yes, we do the best we can. My penmanship is not the greatest, I have to admit. It never has been. There's a limited amount of space that you can write in the reports. I do the best that I can to get all the information. I try to put the pertinent information to the case in the citation. Sometimes you cannot put everything in there.
Is it so hard to use a second page to continue the report?
I just don't have enough room to put it in there, but I do try to get as much information in there as I possibly can.
So you never pick up a second page and supplement it if there's not enough room in the citation itself?
No, sir, I do not have an MDT which would allow me to do that. I have to do paper citation still, so that makes it very difficult. But no,
so you cannot even supplement it if you have relevant information that must go into that report. You just ran out of room. You're just SOL?
If it must go in the report, it goes in the report.
Fair enough. So I want to dive in. I'm sorry. Let's back up. So
that was a very stupid answer. The officer could just rule out whatever he wished and call it unimportant.
When you were in the right-hand lane on highway, which one was it? 150?
US 150 bypass.
US 150 bypass.
It has several numbers. I think it's 127, 150. I think it's listed as several highways, but yes.
You may be right. I think that's the one that I actually took over. My GPS was.
Yeah, there are several roads.
Right. And you saw Mr. Woods pass you, which you later determined was by pacing him, at least.
Correct.
10 miles over the speed limit.
That's correct.
Okay. And you decided to initiate a traffic stop. Based on that.
Actually, I was going to initiate the traffic stop based on when he passed me and moved over into my lane. At that point, I was already planning on initiating a traffic stop at that point, but then I went ahead and he continued on, so I paced him and paced his vehicle.
When he cut you off, that you made the determination, I'm going to pull that vehicle over.
There was going to be a traffic stop conducted on that vehicle, yes.
And then subsequently you paced him at 65 miles an hour?
Correct.
In a 55 mile zone?
That's correct.
And you pulled him over?
That's correct.
And he pulled over, did he continue on for a short while, a long while, or did he pull over right away when he saw your cherries?
I don't remember that. I'm assuming he pulled over fairly quickly.
This wouldn't be the only instance he couldn't remember stuff. It would be a recurring problem, which I doubt was true.
If he would have continued to drive, I would have listed that in the citation.
And did he pull over to the side of the road?
He did pull over to the side of the road, yes.
And you pulled up behind him?
Yes.
Okay. Shortly after that, do you remember approaching Mr. Wood's vehicle?
Yes.
Was his window rolled down, or did you ask him to roll the window down?
I have no idea.
You don't remember?
I do not remember that.
Okay. But you've stated that you detected the odor of alcohol coming from the vehicle.
Yes.
How can he detect the odor of alcohol coming from the vehicle if the windows were closed? He was clearly lying. And did you ask him out of the vehicle immediately right then, or did you go back to the car, radio for backup? What procedure did you follow?
Actually, I don't remember. Normally, if I observe an odor of alcoholic beverages, I'll ask the subject to exit the vehicle at that point. I don't remember in that case. I know that you said that I walked back and got back into my vehicle. I don't remember doing that, but I'm sure that's a possibility that I did that to check his license and run his license, but I don't recall doing that. But normally, if I smell alcoholic beverages, I will get the subject out. He just dismissed any question he didn't want to answer by saying he didn't remember. Try to perform field sobriety test.
And that's exactly what you did in this case, correct? You asked him out of the vehicle?
Yes.
You stated that eventually you got Mr. Woods to perform the HGN, also known as the horizontal gaze nystagmus test.
That's correct.
And I remember, because I wrote it down, on direct, you've stated, quote, alcohol can cause nystagmus, right?
That's correct.
And there are other causes of nystagmus as well.
I'm not,
do you remember being taught at the academy?
I'm not a medical doctor, and I do remember that, and I think there are some other drugs, PCP being one, inhalants being one, and if I'm not mistaken, a brain stem injury or something to that effect could cause nystagmus.
Are you aware that heredity or diet can also create nystagmus?
Never heard that.
What about caffeine?
I know that there had been some research done on caffeine, and I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, I remember them saying that they didn't believe that affected nystagmus.
Hats off to the attorney. He didn't have to make a point. His questions and the answers he got from the corrupt cops were making the points for him.
Let's go back to the when you asked Mr. Woods out of the vehicle. Okay. You've also been taught to look for other indicators of intoxication. You remember the pre-exit, the post-exit. Field sobriety is just one of them. But you'll, using your common sense, I believe, we're not leaving common sense at the door, as we've stated. Neither do you. You use your common sense to see, is the subject impaired by alcohol, something else, or if they're just having a medical issue, if it was like a post-accident, let's say, and you need to call EMT, not something that happened here, or EMS rather.
The attorney continued to give the officer slaps indirectly, and he had no responses to them.
And looking over in your report, one of the indicators that are most common, for instance, are red bloodshot eyes.
That's correct.
And Mr. Woods did not have red bloodshot eyes in this case.
He did have bloodshot glossy eyes, yes sir. He did.
And you never wrote that down in your citation?
I believe it is in my citation, yes sir. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it's toward the bottom of the citation.
Oh, you are correct, sir. I do apologize. Bloodshot, glassy eyes. And it was 10:54 at night, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But he did not have a flushed face, did he?
I don't recall him having a flushed face.
Which is another indicator of an intoxication.
A very rare mistake from the attorney, the only one he'd made up until this point.
He did not have slurred speech, did he?
I don't recall him having slurred speech, no.
So he spoke perfectly fine?
He didn't speak a whole great deal, but what little he did speak, yes.
He had no trouble getting out of his vehicle?
I don't recall him having any trouble.
Stumbling or falling over?
I don't recall that, no.
He didn't use the vehicle, sometimes they'll use the vehicle to balance themselves as they're about to fall. He didn't do that?
No, sir, I would have listed it if he would have.
He didn't fall over into the pavement as he got out of the vehicle?
No, sir.
He didn't throw up?
No, sir.
You've stated that initially he was a little bit uncooperative, but later he began to cooperate.
No, not really. It's hard to explain. He did what I asked him to do, but yet he would not perform field sobriety tests. When I asked him for his license and insurance, he gave them to me. When I asked him to step out of the vehicle, he did so. When I asked him to take field sobriety test, he did not want to take those. At that point, I explained to him that that's the only way I can, you've told me you've had 3 or 4 drinks. I smell alcohol in your breath. He did have the bloodshot glossy eyes. At that point, it's my duty to make sure he's safe to be on the roadway for him, his passenger, and the public.
What this cop didn't tell was that he didn't let the man get his jacket from his car, despite the extremely cold weather. That would be the reason he didn't want to do a field sobriety test.
Based on his driving, I didn't think his judgment was very good, almost cutting me off. I asked him to step out. I explained to him that's the only way I can determine whether or not you're safe to drive. He then took the HGN, a horizontal gaze nystagmus test, but then when I asked to do the other ones, he said there's no need in it and would not perform those tests for me. And then, of course, at the detention center, he would not submit to a breath test.
For your information, the man asked for a blood test, but this evil cop declined his request.
Was he polite with you?
I don't know if I would call it polite. He was...
Agitated?
No, he wasn't agitated. He was just matter of fact. I guess this is the best way I can.
Fair enough.
He didn't seem threatening, but he just was not cooperative either.
Do you remember, I know it's been a long time, as a matter of fact, I'm going to ask this question before I ask my next one. 16 years ago, you did complete the 40 hours, which is standard in Richmond to this day, to complete for the standardized field sobriety and DUI detection training.
That's correct.
Well, the officer, if he had half a brain, would know the man would be at least a little pissed if he got pulled over in the middle of a freezing night, having to be outside without a jacket.
Did you ever recertify at any point? Did you recomplete A-RIDE, which is the Advanced Roadside and Driving Education?
I have had the advanced DUI course. I don't know when. It's been years ago that I have had the advanced DUI training course. I have completed parts of the 40-hour course again. Maybe the whole course, I'm not sure, on the field sobriety test.
Do you remember when that was? I'm just trying to get a feel.
It's been years. It's been several years.
Do you remember during the course and the re-course, you were taught, because I've taken the course myself in Georgia with a DRE certified, he's got all the credentials, he's a DRE. At the jail, you did not perform or ask Mr. Woods to perform any field sobriety testing?
No, sir, that's not standardly what we do. We normally do it, we make our determination on the scene.
And you've, I think I'm repeating Mr. Johnson here, you've stated in one of his questions, Mr. Woods never asked for you to repeat the implied consent?
Not that I recall.
He could have done the field sobriety test at the station and made an exception due to the weather. But of course he wasn't going to. He wanted to arrest the man.
Prior to asking him to submit to the breath test, which he refused. And then you've also stated that it appeared to you that he understood everything.
He didn't ask me. As far as I remember, if he would have asked something, I would have listed it in the report, but obviously he didn't ask anything, so.
This is a spectacular performance from the attorney, a masterclass in defeating the evil at their own game.
Mr. Johnson, I'll give you a moment in any redirect.
Yes, sir. Just real briefly. So, was there ever any mention of any medical conditions that would preclude Mr. Woods from taking any of these tests?
As far as I can remember, Mr. Woods never said anything about a medical condition.
And is it your standard? Would you say, you know what, it's too cold or it's too hot, or I'm just going to pick you up and take you to jail, and then we'll do the test there?
Normally, we try not to arrest someone unless there's a reason to arrest them. I wouldn't. I get that the weather's, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's icy. We do the best we can with what we have.
It wouldn't be that much of an inconvenience to take him to the station for the test. Either he was lazy or he did it on purpose.
We try to take the weather into consideration. We're cold, they're cold. We understand that, but that's, unfortunately, if we feel that there's a need to perform these tests, we're going to administer those tests.
Now, you stated that, well, you don't recall whether he had a flushed face, but could a flushed face also be due to the cold?
I'm sure it could. My face has been red and windburned before. Okay.
If you did try to consider the weather, you wouldn't have told him to do the test without a jacket and on the roadside.
Now, if Mr. Woods had submitted to the intoxilizer and blown well below the legal limit, what would you do at that point?
His charge would have been amended, as far as I know, to a reckless driving.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Just one, Your Honor, if I may. I apologize.
Take your time. You're fine.
During your interaction with Mr. Woods after you placed him in the cruiser, do you recall at any point Mr. Woods asking you to take him to the hospital for a blood test?
I do not recall
that. You don't recall? That's all I have, Judge.
Mr. Johnson, any regret?
No, sir.
Deputy, you may step down, sir.
Thank you.
As a result of the attorney's efforts, the defendant was deemed guilty but didn't have to serve jail time, and his license wasn't even suspended. The outcome was much better for them than their initial offer. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and comment below with your thoughts. And if you liked this video, you'll love this next one where these cops humble entitled Karens.
You're f***ing done. Put your hands behind your butt.